Maybe. All right, being 6 o'clock, I'm going to call the Coos Bay City Council meeting to order. Would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone. Carmen Matthews and Sarah Stevens are both online virtually. Lucinda DeNovo is traveling from Medford and she isn't sure she was going to be able to make it in time for the meeting, so she might make it or not depending on traffic. Anyway, presentation, appreciation for the former battalion chief, Steve Coos, and Mark's going to handle this. Okay. It's always a pleasure to see all the firemen, but you don't need a special occasion, it can come.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So Battalion Chief Steve Takis, why don't you come on up here? He celebrated 20 years with the city in January. However, Steve has applied and been accepted with a position with the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office as a Deputy Fire Marshal for the Coos County. His last day with the department was May 13th. Steve was promoted to lieutenant from firefighter engineer to lieutenant in December of 2016, and then again from lieutenant to battalion chief in May of 2019. Steve's a paramedic. He has a bachelor's degree in both business administration and fire administration. Steve was very active in several of our programs within the department. Most recently, he served as the administrator of the hazmat team, the drone team, public education and fire prevention, personal health, personnel health and safety, as well as incident reporting and incident information management. As the Deputy State Fire Marshal, Steve will be supporting local fire service agencies throughout Coos County. Some of his roles will be to conduct fire inspections, fire cause investigation, public education, and representing the Oregon State Fire Marshal on the South Coast. So Steve's leadership and his contribution to the fire department will be missed. So we have a presentation of this, and it says, for over 20 years of dedicated leadership and service to the Coos Bay Fire Department and the community that we proudly served, January 2004 to May 2024, May 2024. So, Steve. So that particular award or gift has a trumpet on the top, and that is, it goes back to before there were portable radios. Fire service leaders or officers would use a speaking trumpet, kind of like a bullhorn or that kind of thing, to direct staff or direct the operations on a fire scene. And so we utilize that not only as a historical nod, but also as part of our insignia that represents an officer within the department. So that's a little explanation of what that box and the thing on top is. So with that, I'm going to step out of the way and let Steve say a couple things.
Well, before you do that, Mark, could you stand sideways so she'd get a picture of you handing him the thing?
You have a wide angle lens?
Yeah.
I don't have anything to say. I had a great 20 years with the city. I already miss the guys in the department, but I'm glad I still get to work with them in some capacity, and I'm sure I'll get to see everybody around somewhere. Thank you.
Well, wait, just for us on the council, we want to thank you for your service, Steve, and I'm glad you're going to be staying in the area and continue to serve in just another capacity. So thank you and good luck to you. All right, you bet. Next item on the agenda is consent calendar. We only have one item on there. Council, how would you like to proceed?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
So moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. On the consent calendar, it's an acceptance for a Ford Family Foundation grant for $50,000. Good job, Chelsea. So anyway, is there any other discussion on that? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Next item, approval of the Pride Month proclamation. Jaden is online, and she will read the proclamation. Or do you want, wait a minute, Nicole, you want to give a little background? Let's give a little, I'm sorry, Jaden, I jumped the gun. All right, go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you. So June has been historically designated as Pride Month, and that's following an incident in 1969, which kind of started the process towards several changes in our country that would allow some acknowledgement of the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our communities. Traditionally, also, the city of Coos Bay has done a proclamation to acknowledge June as Pride Month. Jaden has offered to read the proclamation for us. So if you'd like to do so.
Hi, Jaden here. Pride Month proclamation. Whereas the month of June was designated Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall Inn incident, which occurred in June 1969 and is generally recognized as the catalyst of the LGBTQ rights movement. And whereas the official theme for 2024 is Reflect, Empower, Unite. And whereas every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law without discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, and mental or physical disability. And whereas the long and ongoing struggle of the LGBTQ community for basic rights, basic civil and human rights continues to provide inspiration to all. And whereas Coos Bay celebrates the history and diversity of our city's LGBTQ plus community and promotes a society in which all residents can live free from discrimination. And whereas Pride Month is an opportunity to celebrate this harmony in which we coexist. And
Now therefore, I, Joe Benetti, the mayor of the city of Coos Bay, do hereby proclaim month of June 2024 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in the city of Coos Bay and encourage everyone to eliminate prejudice everywhere it exists, respect the rights of all people, and to celebrate the great diversity of our city. With that being the case, I would need a motion and a second to accept this proclamation.
I'll move that we approve the proclamation designating June 2024 as Pride Month.
I would second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the proclamation as read. Are there any comments or discussions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next item, approve the Juneteenth proclamation. Nicole?
Yes, thank you. President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st of 1863, which resulted in the adoption of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery. However, it wasn't until a couple years beyond that in which Major General Gordon Granger announced at the end of the Civil War slavery was also abolished, and that happened in Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1865. So for a couple years, those folks were still living as they had previously lived. So Juneteenth has become an acknowledgement of that significant date to all of those who previously had been under slavery. So we have historically here at the city and across the nation celebrated Juneteenth. We treat that as a time of reflection, remembrance, and recommitment to the same self-evident truths that guide efforts of equity, equality, and justice. And I believe also Jaden was going to read that proclamation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nicole. This Pride Month is definitely near and dear to my heart, and Juneteenth are as well. For me to be here today, that means people endured and were resilient. And so I just want to express some great gratitude for the shoulders who I stand upon. Whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the slaves in Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passing of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas word about the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed some 2.5 years to June 19th, 1865, in reaching authorities and African Americans in the South and southwestern United States. And whereas June 19th has a special meaning to African Americans and is called Juneteenth, combining the words June and 19th, and has been celebrated by the African American community for over 150 years. And whereas in its celebration of freedom, Juneteenth is a day that should be recognized by all Americans and remind us all of our incredible capacity to heal, hope, and emerge from our darkest moments with purpose and resolve.
Now therefore, I, Joe Benetti, the mayor of the city of Coos Bay, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2024 as Juneteenth in the city of Coos Bay and encourage everyone to recommit ourselves to the work of equity, equality, and justice. So with that being the case, I would need a motion and a second to approve this proclamation, please.
I would make a motion to approve the proclamation designating June 19th, 2024 as Juneteenth.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the proclamation, Juneteenth proclamation. Any other comments or discussions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Any
Thank you,
opposed?
Council.
Hearing none, it passes. Jaden, thank you so much for reading these. We appreciate it. Next time,
Thank
maybe we'll
you.
see you in person. Take care.
Yes. All righty.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Next item on the agenda is consideration to rescind Resolution 21-01, Policy for Reducing Street Construction and Design Standards. We had quite the discussion on this at the last council meeting, and I think we've come to a consensus, and Jennifer's going to give us the highlights on it and tell us where we're at.
Okay, I'll start with some background. The city streets standards guide the current design requirements for the construction of new city streets. Engineering standards focus on traffic and pedestrian safety, drainage control, and sustainability of the asset. The current engineering standards can be reduced due to Resolution 21-01 titled Policy for Reducing Street Construction and Design Standards. So in other words, development of a single residential lot adjacent to an unimproved right-of-way may not be required to install these full-width improvements. The fire code standards focus on providing the minimum requirements for safe and adequate access by fire apparatus. The standards protect fire life and safety and are sensible, but have become increasingly expensive to meet. Many infill lots are accessed by unopened, unimproved city right-of-way or existing gravel streets and paths. The fire code requires a minimum all-weather asphalt or concrete surface to be a 20-foot wide and in some cases wider, and a turnaround may be required. Developers of these individual infill lots are stating that if they have to also install curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and if necessary, storm drain infrastructure, in addition to the 20-foot all-weather access required by fire code, it's cost prohibitive. However, not installing curb, gutter, and drainage improvements will more than likely reduce the life of the all-weather access for which the city would be responsible for maintenance and/or replacement. Furthermore, not installing curb and gutter restricts the ability for city to maintain the street with the sweeper vehicle. Also, not installing sidewalks reduces connectivity and potentially the livability. The trigger point for requirements of these improvements is development of any single lot. However, currently, the resolution in place allows for reducing the street construction and design standards. While it is understood that requiring these single infill lots to build city streets to the street section standards identified in the transportation system plan and the municipal code may stifle some development, it will protect the taxpayer's street asset. So at the May 28, 2024 work session, staff presented potential infrastructure costs and a case study. The case study was only an example. Council discussed the various options associated with the street improvement standard for infill projects. It was staff's understanding that council wanted staff to present a revision to Resolution 2101 such that the standards identified in the TSP and the municipal code would be constructed when development of an infill lot occurs. In reviewing Resolution 2101, if it is the desire of the council to implement the full-width street improvements with drainage, staff recommends rescinding Resolution 21-01.
Does council have any other comments or questions for Jennifer before we proceed? All right.
I just want to say I was unable to attend the work session, but I did listen to the recording, and I really appreciate the dynamic discussion that the council had regarding this topic.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, so then if everyone agrees with what's been discussed, we need to adopt a resolution.
I move we rescind Resolution 21-01, policy for reducing street construction and design standards.
I would second.
It's been moved and seconded to rescind the Resolution 24-17, amending, rescinding Resolution 21-01, policy of reducing street construction and design standards. Okay, any comments or discussions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Okay, next item, consideration to adopt Resolution 24-17, amending council rules. Nicole?
Yes, thank you. At the work session, we had some discussion on the council rules, specifically in relation to public comments and where that would best be seated on the agenda. Following that, we've made those recommended changes, along with some clerical changes that are helpful in readability and/or to align with what has been practiced. So what you have before you is a set of council rules in legislative format, so you can see those changes that were being suggested, and then also one that's in clean copy in case you like to see what the ending result might look like. So we are presenting that if you are interested to, we're recommending the adoption of those revisions.
So can you highlight what they were for us so we all are?
Yes, so I'm not sure how much, if we want to go page by page, but so one of the things initially started out in the first paragraph, and it talks about amending it by ordinance. However, we close out the document as an amendment by resolution. So we have historically always amended this by resolution, kind of cleaning up that language. We are kind of clarifying public comments in relation to work sessions, what we do by practice. That's usually allowed at work session. The other kind of bigger thing, we made some changes in regards to spelling and capitalization, all those kinds of things. That doesn't really impact anything. Making some consistency in reference to council positions, that kinds of thing. What we're really trying to do here is go back to where we were, having public comments starting back at the beginning of the meeting following the flag salute. They were for a bit of time sitting right before the city attorney's report. We don't traditionally, haven't for the last several years, had a city attorney's report, but we've left that in there just in case we find reason to do that. And I don't think there was any
yeah, just some clerical stuff that got
outside of that.
So as long as the council, and then there was we had talked about restricting the council to a time limit. We did not do that. And basically move public comments back up to the beginning, and so that any public can also reference a item that's on the agenda, which being at the end would not allow that. So that was the main reason, I think. So the only other thing I would like to make sure that, one of my concerns was that at the beginning, that this could go on for quite a while. And we could find ourselves, as we did at one time, not being able to complete a meeting. So do we want to limit the amount of time for the public comments at the beginning? And then if it goes longer than that, have it continued on at the end? Or just leave it as is and see where it goes?
Don't you, as the presiding officer, have that discretionary?
I can, but I mean, it'd be nice. I mean, are we looking at 30 minutes or 40 minutes or something that, some guidelines here, so.
I think we have a limit on the meeting time.
Right, but I mean.
It would have to go a pretty lengthy time period to.
Which happened. So, okay.
We made it.
We'll just keep it, well, I know, but we didn't do council comments that night. So anyway, that's fine. We'll just deal with it as it comes.
Are we going to if we keep the time to 3 minutes, I think we could judge that if we have 40 people in here at 3 minutes.
Hopefully.
We can realize that's going to be we'll have to address it.
Yes.
If there's 5 people at 3 minutes.
As it references in here, if there's quite a few people, then we should suggest to them if they would have one speaker or a couple.
Right,
So,
a representative.
all right.
And that's where it's probably going to be imperative to make sure that people who want to speak sign up, so we know
True.
who's speaking.
Okay. All right, so if we're pleased with that, then we need to adopt Resolution 24-17, amending the council rules.
I would make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2417, amending the council rules.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 24-17, amending council rules. Is there any other discussion on this or comments? One other thing I think the council needs to keep in mind, that we can suspend these council rules anytime that we wish. So if for some reason, and I'm not sure what the reason may be, it's our discretion, because these are our rules for us to follow and our criteria. So just keep that in mind.
And to do that, that just takes a motion.
Exactly. All right, so if they're hearing nothing, oh, Carmen, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I guess, I think you bring up a good point about a time limit on general public comment, like as an agenda item. You know, and it could be fairly large, and then if it just, we anticipate it's going over, we could have a motion to extend on the day based on whatever the agenda overall is looking like in terms of how much work we have to get through. I could just see it being beneficial for the public, a group of the public going, oh, hey, we've got 30 comments here, that's going to be 30 minutes. And if there's anybody else that's going to show up, it's going to be a thing. So we might have to assume that there's going to have to be an extension of time limits on the overall comment period, as opposed to just walking into the room and being like, I'm not sure how long they're going to let us talk, or you know, what is generally accepted as I guess appropriate for us to be able to hear public comments and to get through the work of the day. So, you know, I mean, up to a third of the maximum amount of time, like, or 45 minutes, which is like, you know, a third would be, I guess, 1 hour, which would leave 2/3 for city business. I'm just trying to plan out, like, if I was doing public comments and I had I was part of a larger group that had a lot of comments, what would I anticipate? And I think it would be better if I anticipated at least some kind of mark, as opposed to just, oh, we get there and they're only going to listen to 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So I kind of like your suggestion.
Okay, thank you. I think it's something that we'll just have to kind of work through together and make sure we can accommodate it. So that's the main objective. So, yeah.
So we don't want to put anything in writing as like at least a minimum amount of.
Well, I think, unless the council wants to, I think what they've suggested is that we have a right to go ahead and do that at each meeting, depending on the situation, or I do as the running the meeting, and so we can do that. I mean, I don't have a problem putting the time limit in if you like, and see how the rest feel. I don't know.
Well, do you feel comfortable as the point person for setting that time limit, or would you rather have some kind of document that backs you up on a general acceptable amount of time?
I think I think there's going to be some variables, Carmen. It'd be easier just to have a set time, but I think the variables are going to leave things up in the air. So what I would suggest that I would do is, under the circumstances, talk to the council when things happen and say, look, I'm going to limit this to 30 minutes tonight or 45 minutes, and then we'll have more comments at the end of the meeting, or maybe we need to have a separate agenda item and carry it over. So in some fashion, and I think that we can get a consensus from the council. So
I hear you on that, but I also think consistency is important. And if we are considering, you know, a lot of folks come in for one topic and we say, okay, tonight we're going to give you 30 minutes, and then a different topic comes up and we say, okay, tonight we're going to give you 45 minutes. I'm not really sure that's totally equitable. So yeah. I'm leaning towards having something in writing.
So I would think just saying a minimum of 30 minutes and then to be extended if necessary.
Okay. Everyone all right with that? No?
I am not in favor of that whatsoever.
to address Carmen's issue, that would be at least documented for the public to realize we've got a 30-minute window to discuss what we, or to, to say what we wish to say. And if it's a large topic, then you could address it at that time and extend it, or.
Yeah,
I'm fine either way, I just,
So,
Can I
go
just
ahead. Yes,
finish
go
what
ahead.
I was, I'm not in favor of that because I think that there are times when people take time out of their schedule away from family or take time off from work if they're very passionate about an item that's on the agenda and it's their one opportunity to address us face to face. And I would hate to say you were person number 11 or 13 that didn't get to speak because we had a 30-minute time limit. I just think that's a really short public comment period.
I would also side with Stephanie on this one. I don't want to see a hard cap on it. If a bunch of folks come out with something to voice, then yeah, I just don't want to see a cap on it. It's inconvenient for us potentially in the duration of the meeting, but that's one of the various burdens we bear for the position.
So I'd just like to address that. I'm not trying to actually limit it. I'm just trying to give people a, an acceptable amount that we will give every meeting, and we can have a discussion about extending it depending on the current agenda, whatever the agenda is. Let's say we've got 20 things or 15 things on the agenda that we have to get through, but we have a 3-hour time limit. And if we are taking public comments for 2 hours, we're not going to be able to do that. So we have to be able to have some kind of discussion that allows people to speak their mind and fulfill our duties to get through the agenda. And I'm mostly doing this in part because I would feel it would be respectful to know what the general rules are, and hopefully they could be extended if it seems like there's space for it within the agenda. And secondly, I don't like just pinning that on the mayor as him having to make this decision and it being, it's swinging one way or the other. Maybe 30 minutes is just too low. I mean, obviously, that would be 10 comments in the 30-minute period. It could be much longer. It could be an hour and a half for all it doesn't have to be 30 minutes, but it just gives Joe at least a starting point to where, if he anticipates it's going to go longer, we can have that discussion as a council and we can choose to extend that, no problem, especially if we have ample room in the agenda. I don't know, I think that I would prefer to walk into the room knowing what the rules are as a public commenter, as opposed to just not knowing what's happening.
Yeah, and where I was coming from, Carmen, I didn't suggest that we limit only the 30 minutes. I was saying limit the time up front and then let the rest of the comments be at the end if we ran into a problem. I think I can manage. I've done it before. We just have to be considerate and saying how many people are going to speak, hold them to it. Maybe we have to cut their time down to 2 minutes. We've done that before. Or we try to put them in groups, or we extend them to the end of the meeting or something like that. So I'm fine either way. But
Mr. Mayor, I think in the entire 8 years that I've been on this council, it's less than one handful of times that we've actually encountered an issue where we went and we were approaching our time limit for a council meeting, that we weren't able, we've actually been able to do all of our business. And I have been attending council meetings, not just here, but all over this county for 30 plus years. And I still see this as a rarity, an exception. It is not the rule.
I think, obviously, we're not in total agreement, but I want to reemphasize that this is something that we can discuss again, and we can change again. Nothing's set in rules, set in stone on this, and we can suspend them. So I think we need to keep that in mind. If something comes up, a situation comes up, we have the right to say, okay, we're going to suspend the rules and we're going to do such, whatever that may be, to accommodate whatever the situation may be. So I'm fine with that at this moment, and if we need to, then I think we bring them back and we address that problem or situation. Because otherwise, I
Okay.
don't think we're going to be totally in agreement on this. I understand what you're talking about, Carmen. I understand, Sarah, you're totally, I both get it. I understand everyone's concern, and I don't think there's a perfect answer out there at this point. I think it's like we have to just go with it and see what we need to do to accommodate the situation, so.
Yeah, I just, I don't like having to react based on
I understand.
whatever might be coming towards us. I feel it looks like it's a defensive move as opposed to something that's organized and expected, and you know the rules of the game. But if we want to play willy-nilly, then we can go that route. That's fine.
I wouldn't call it willy-nilly.
Well, I
Well,
think,
it's like, well, we'll deal with it when we get there. That doesn't, not very clear to me. I'm sorry, it's just not.
I understand. I mean, I truly understand where you're coming from, but I'm not sure how do we satisfy everyone on this situation, so.
Yep,
Let's,
I'll
let's-
let it go.
let's leave it as it is and see what happens, and like I said, again, we have these options to suspend the rules or change them at the time we need to. Anyone else? I'm sorry I brought it up. Anyway, anyone?
I think it's okay to have a good discussion, and at least all the points get to be heard.
All right. I need a motion and a second to, if we want to adopt it as is.
I think
Marie.
you have that.
Yes, we do. I apologize. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Resolution 2417 amending the council rules has been first and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you, appreciate it. Next item is consideration to approve the Dyer Partnership Contract Amendment for the pump station. 9, Jennifer?
Thank you. Pump Station 9 is located easterly of the intersection of Montana Avenue and Southwest Boulevard in Inglewood. It was originally constructed in 1966, and an upgrade included a more robust control system in 1974. Since that time, there's been minimal additional work performed aside from the routine maintenance. The pump station is currently being upgraded. During design, it was recommended by the engineer of work, the Dyer Partnership, to replace the wet well lid, but not the wet well structure, and this was to save on costs. The contractor was required to submit a lid along with structural calculations for review and approval by the Dyer Partnership. It was determined by the contractor's engineer and Dyer that the existing wet well does not meet current structural code requirements. City staff worked with the Dyer Partnership, and it was determined that the entire wet well did not need to be replaced, but rather reinforced. Just a little background on the timeline between planning and construction. We started planning of this facility at the end of 2018. We worked through design in 2019. COVID hit. We had to work through regulatory approvals. That delayed. We really did not get final approval until end of 2020, beginning of 2021. Then we dealt with lead times. We had to procure the generator because there was an 18-month lead time, and so we couldn't bid the project with having the generator on site. So we didn't enter into a contract with the construction company, Pacific Excavation, until middle of 2022. And so by that time, there had been at least, I believe, 2 code revisions to the Oregon Structural Specialty Code. So that's the reason for this issue. On July 5th, 2022, Council approved the contract for the Dyer Partnership to perform construction management for $125,040 with a 15% contingency. To date, one amendment has been processed for $7,500 for a total contract amount of $132,540. Typically, contingency covers the unknowns. However, this unknown is outside the normal scope. As such, staff is requesting council consider increasing the contract amount for the design and construction management of the wet well reinforcement for an amount of $54,383, which includes a 15% contingency. This will increase the total approved amount for the Dyer Partnership contract for Pump Station 9 from $143,796 to $198,179. So the design and reinforcement of the wet well was not originally planned as a scoping item for this project, and at this time, construction costs are unknown. While the Water Quality Fund 29 Improvement Fund have the dollars for this additional design, staff may propose deferring an inflow and infiltration reduction project to fund the construction portion. Staff will present a more formal plan to fund construction once design is complete and construction costs are known. So one thing too, and there's going to be more to follow on this, in order to reduce costs as a result of this delay, staff's going to be coming back to council to present at a future meeting to present taking over the bypass pumping from the contractor, and that will also reduce the costs associated with this delay. That's just a future topic.
Did everyone follow that? Any questions? If there's no questions, I need a motion to approve the contract amendment for pump station number 9 for the Dyer Partnership.
I move we approve the Dyer Partnership contract amendment to design and construction management of the wet well reinforcement for pump station 9 for a total contract cost of $198,179, which includes a 15% contingency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Dyer Partnership contract amendment for pump station 9. Any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Next item is consideration to approve the Dyer Partnership contract amendment for pump station number 6. Jennifer.
Thank you. So the city is also upgrading Pump Station 6, which is located at the northwest corner of Coos Avenue and South 5th Street. The pump station was originally constructed in 1960. Then in 1991, the pump station was upgraded to include a more robust control and electrical system and a structure to house the controls. At the time of design, it was assumed the existing wet well was in good condition, but there were some cracks that were observed, so the engineer proposed lining of the wet well. The contractor dewatered the wet well and was in the process of lining, but sometime between the evening of February 28th and the morning of February 29th, the wall of the wet well collapsed. No one was harmed, but the wet well was damaged beyond repair. Upon further investigation, it was learned that in 1960, the wet well was formed and poured in place in sections, and the individual sections were not doweled together. There was no way to know this during design, and the as-built did not reflect that. The engineer of work determined that due to the observations discovered during the failure and the geotechnical considerations, the wet well is beyond repair and a new wet well must be constructed. The Dyer Partnership is the engineer of work for the project. Council approved the original construction management contract for $125,040 with a 15% contingency. To date, only one amendment has been processed, bringing the total contract to $130,540. To design and oversee construction, the contract amount is being proposed to be increased by $160,070 for a total contract price of $295,610. Staff is also requesting that 15% contingency, which would bring a total approved amount to $331,326. So the budget implications for this are very similar to PS6. We believe that, well, we know that the Fund 29 has the funds to absorb these design costs. But we're going to come back at a later date for a strategy to fund construction once we know what those construction costs are.
Yeah, so we talked about this in the budget committee, budget process, that we need to consider something, and so we talked about bringing this back. So did we have these, when did we know about these, I guess?
So the wet well failed February, is I think
Okay.
what I said, so we knew about it then, but we're working through design. So we have to do geotech and structural, but in order to even start the geotech and the structural, we have to go out and do borings. So we had to schedule that, so that took a couple months. So I'm told they're done with the borings, and now we're just waiting for the geotechnical evaluation.
So you have an idea of, you'll have an idea of construction costs for the rest of the year. You're going to try to put something together, what it might be. Okay, and bring it back to us?
Yes.
Good. All right, council?
I'm sorry.
We need to approve the pump station number 6.
It feels like every meeting and I realize when you have a system, you have to update it and maintain it, and I want us to do that, and I want us to do it correctly. And I also realize that in our community, it's a difficult situation at best with the tide flows and all of that. But is there something where we could be, I don't know if I want to be more proactive, because I think you guys are on top of it, but it seems like we have these things and like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. And How can we address that, so we're not being surprised by this?
So we do a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna maybe say we have 2 treatment plants, 22 sewer pump stations, 3 storm pump stations, 90 miles of sewer pipe, 50 miles of storm. When you do rehab and construction and you're working underground, or you're working with as-built that were done in the 1960s that don't reflect all the current information, there's only so much investigation we can do up front, and we really don't know until we start digging.
Right.
I hear you, though.
Yeah, thanks, I appreciate that.
You know, I think the
So-
other thing, oh, go ahead.
Well, how close, are we making progress so that we're getting past this? I was looking at the construction stuff. We still have a lot of old
We do.
infrastructure. Are we progressing to the point where we can address what Counselor Cribbins is asking? Or how, are we halfway there, or?
So the wastewater doesn't stop, right? 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365, I mean, it's constant, so it's constant wear and tear. So it's a constant, it's constant rehabbing of the asset. I just think that we're doing a good job. We're trying to do a pump station, always have a pump station under construction. Even if we did one a year, we would not keep up with the design life of a pump station, which is 20 years, because we have 22 sewer pump stations.
I think the other thing that we need to keep in mind, when the consultant was here on the sewer rate issues, he showed the graph, how it starts to diminish because we're catching up. Also, we didn't take this approach until when? I don't know, 10 years ago, 12 years ago? When did he come on board? When did you start doing this?
Well, yeah, I've been here 10 years, and it's been longer than that.
So but prior to that, we weren't doing that. We were more reactive. And then we were saying, okay, then we need to increase this, and we didn't have the money, so we're always trying to catch up. And I don't think we were maintaining it properly. And then on top of it, we just brought the wastewater system back into house because it wasn't being maintained or operated properly. And really, I should say, I don't think things were being checked out, like the pump stations and the lines and TV, like they should have been. And so I think some things slipped by because we had a contract at X for these people, and they were gonna maintain it within it. And so therefore, I don't think we got the job that we're getting now. And so some of that, I think the combination of it all has happened. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's pretty much it.
So are we making progress, though? I mean,
Absolutely.
okay.
To my recollection, when we cut the contractor loose as well, they couldn't produce all of their records on what they had done with the system, so
Right.
I would imagine that was a bit of a setback.
Yeah, so now we're finding it out the hard way. All right. Anyway, so hopefully, well, not hopefully, Jennifer will get with us on what they expect the next cost to be for doing a kind of analysis so we know what we're going to go next year. Okay. Council, how would you like to proceed?
I make a motion that we approve the Dyer Partnership Contract Amendment to design and construction management of a new wet well for Pump Station 6 for a total contract cost of $331,326, which includes a 15% contingency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Dyer Partnership Contract for Pump Station 6. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Consideration to approve rental of equipment to temporarily bypass flows around Pump Station 6.
Okay, well, we just talked about this. So the contractor is delayed until we can work through a design. So again, in order to reduce costs, the city staff has agreed to take over the bypass pumping from the contractor. Pacific Excavation is the contractor. And this, like I said, will save on cost because PACX does not have to monitor and maintain the bypass pumping. The Dyer Partnership estimates the design and approval process will take no more than 9 months. If completed sooner, Pacific Excavation will commence work, and the rental charges and monitoring of the bypass pumping will become their responsibility under their current contract. The equipment rental consists of 2 bypass pumps, piping, control modules, and an emergency call-out system. The monthly rate is $17,629.09, with a total not to exceed $158,661.81, and that's 9 months.
What does it cost to own one?
One pump, and this is just a standard pump, is between $150,000 and $200,000, but every pump is designed differently because of the different static and dynamic heads. So we did look at that.
I'm just gonna tease you a little bit. Whenever Jennifer talks, it feels like my wife talking about a trip to Costco. I'm gonna spend $1,000 whether I need it or not. Except yours is $100,000.
Well, I don't think there's any options for us that we need to get this fixed. Isn't Coos, we have a lot of water in that area, right? Don't we, flow off that we were worrying about even on the road? Is that the same area?
Yes, that's stormwater, yes.
Okay, all right.
I do wanna say, I was being silly, but I appreciate how much you're on top of this and always trying to keep it maintained. And I do know that it's cheaper the way you're doing it now than if we just waited and did it reactively. And it keeps the system up and flowing right for everybody. So on a serious note, I appreciate all the
Thank you.
effort you put into it.
All right, so we have consideration before us for the bypass flow pump.
I have a feeling she knew I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, she was prepared. Well,
She
Jennifer
was Johnny
usually
on the
pretty
spot on
prepared.
that one.
Yeah.
I would make a motion to approve the rental of equipment for bypass pumping of Pump Station 6 during the design of a new wet well for an amount not to exceed $158,662.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the rental of equipment of temporarily bypass flows around Pump Station 6. Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Number H, consideration to revise council meeting schedule for July and August. I talked to Nicole about this. We did this last year. It's something that it's beneficial to other council and also the staff. And I think she sent an email out lining this out for your discussion. So here we are to make a decision whether to move forward on this or not. There you go, Nicole.
Thank you. So the mayor's correct. We did have this discussion last year, and we did a modified summer schedule. We also had the same kind of similar discussion around the holidays and did something there as well. It's important that we're talking about this now because there is business that needs to happen, and so we want to be mindful that we are able still to get things before you timely for projects. So what's being proposed is to potentially for the July 2nd and July 2nd, July 20th, and August 27th meetings be canceled. That would still leave us with a council meeting each month. That would leave us with a July 16th and a July 23rd work session. The work session for July 23rd is important because there is a opportunity for us to meet and discuss the All-Star Heritage Award that the city received. I believe that organization will be in town around that time, so having them able to attend is the perfect scenario. And then maintaining the August 6th. So that kind of gives us the first couple of weeks of July and then the last couple of weeks of August where there are no meetings, kind of bulks the meetings all up into the end of July, first part of August. That is just a option. It isn't the only option, so certainly open to talk about it.
So this is something, again, like I said, I brought up, and there's other cities that do this. In fact, they take off the whole summer, or they'll take off like in the holidays in December and stuff, to allow the council and their families to enjoy the summer or enjoy a holiday. So this is just a consideration. It's worked for us in the past, but again, this is not said as Nicole said, so it's something for you to look at and adopt, or give another suggestion, or not adopt it at all.
And if something were pressing, we can always just call a meeting and take care of it. So this has always worked out.
But that's why she's trying to do it far enough in advance to make sure that she's taken consideration with staff what might need to be done, and so that we don't impact anybody or any progress on anything. So,
I personally have no conflict with the way you have it set up.
everyone all right with it? Sarah, Carmen?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, so that being the case, do we need a
I don't think you need a
just
motion
consensus.
necessarily.
All right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, essentially, we would manage the meeting calendar based on items being placed on a meeting. We wouldn't hold a meeting just to hold a meeting.
Right.
So we don't usually have a motion to not do a meeting, so
So let's make sure that we get this out to the public.
yes,
In
we
our
will do
Friday
that.
update, so they are well aware of it. All right, next item, discussion regarding next step for identification of library location. Nicole, and I think you got Sammy over here also,
Yeah.
so.
Sammy will hopefully add some where I miss. So, as you're aware, we put a advisory vote on the May 21, 2024 ballot, all with the hopes of identifying the location for rebuilding of the library. Unfortunately, there were limitations on the state requirements for measures that are placed on the ballot, and so that advisory vote didn't really provide us what we would deem an ideal result. Earlier in this fiscal year, there was an agreement approved by council with Probowski Research, and they did some survey work for us, which didn't give us very drastic results, in that the council was comfortable with the findings of that. We have been working with that same company leading up to the May ballot to provide informational opportunities for folks to understand the two locations and the ongoing challenges at the current facility. Following the May election, we reached out to the Probowski team regarding what our opportunities we could look at if you wanted to proceed again with pinpointing a location or walking forward with potentially the levy on the November ballot. So they have some options that we could certainly look at depending on what you would like to do. One option would be like a calling, which we've done some of that work on a smaller scale. Like a live call poll, and they also have another survey option too. So it's really up to what you guys would prefer. We're just looking for kind of some next steps on how this team can work this forward.
Well, any comments? How do you want, I'm not comfortable moving forward and just picking a location. We got down, these are the top two that were decided on through the survey results, and I would hate to just pick one and go out with a bond measure, but that's me.
So I remember the data for the most part, and I think we're going to have to rethink on design because some things changed. I know when we were looking at the initial design, we had considered incorporating the dispatch center into it. However, as we talked about during the budget session, with the renovations we did to the dispatch center here, it now has capacity, even if the remaining three departments were to come to us, Myrtle Point, Myrtle Point, Bandon, and the county, I think it is. I think those are the only three remaining things that we don't have for dispatch. So as it stands with the design we have, we could take the entire county's worth of dispatch, so we don't need that in the design of the library anymore. But getting back to the sites, I wouldn't be comfortable picking one or the other. One of the big problems I have with it is based on the data. We'll remember the downtown site was the most popular when we didn't incorporate what the price is, but when we incorporated the price, Cascade Farm ended up being the only one with a potential of success based on the data we received. However, the sample pool they used, because I did statistics stuff once upon a time, if we incorporate the rate of deviation based on the sample size they used, either one of these could have worked. The deviation in the outcome could be a hard no on both, or it could be a partial yes or a hard yes on Cascade. So I am hesitant to pick one or the other. If I had to, I know which one the data would point me to, but it's not the preference as far as where it is, it's just the preference on price. But we also need to rethink the design at this point, because the levy may change or the ask would change in what we go for, because what we need isn't the same anymore, because this process has taken 10 years or so.
Anyone else?
Well,
I would agree with Drew that we need to reassess the design, given all of those things that he just mentioned. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I'm ready to choose a location, which is the downtown location, and I'm ready to move forward.
Okay.
well, I'll say it. We didn't pass a jail levy, and public safety is probably one of the most spoken about concerns we have in Coos County. And I think we have to address that. If we could not, as a county, pass a levy for public safety, what is going to happen when we ask them to fund a library or a community center?
Quick thought, I feel like I read somewhere that North Bend is looking at updating its library.
They are.
Anybody? Say again?
They are updating it.
Maybe it's I am hesitant around some aspects of partnership at the moment, but it might be a good time to talk to them about a consolidated library, if we would just, because we've got a library district that exists. So between the two cities, we could make a really good library.
You mean a brand new one? Or use the existing one? Do they have in North Bend?
Oh, no, that thing's not got enough space. I don't think. I don't know how they're going to expand the thing where it is.
Okay.
But
That's another, well, it's
Like-
another discussion, I guess.
And the library district, isn't that for operations?
Mhm.
Yes, the library district is for operations only. Each city is responsible for the building and the maintenance of that building.
so would the two operational pools combine then if the two libraries were one?
Most likely.
Okay.
It's funded by volume, am I correct?
Partially, yes. Visitors, circulation, and other statistics like that.
Okay.
So,
I suppose I want to start my comments on, how did we get here in the first place? I mean, what was the initial incident that brought this up
You mean going back in time?
back in time? Why are we having this conversation?
So the library has been under failure for some time. From the information we got, we've had an engineer, and what else? What are the other processes we've had to determine
So I
this?
think in 2014, I think is the first time that we had a structural analysis done. We've also had a needs analysis done. The structural analysis identified that there was failure in the pilings. We're having some changes in roof issues, wall alignments, doors being able to open and close, things like that, for that HVAC, yeah.
I remember this.
So
pretty good.
my point was, the building's failing.
Yes.
Correct. So in 2016, when we came on board, it was a situation that the prior council was dealing with, trying to find a way to resolve it. And we kept talking about 5 years. Well, we're past 5 years, and it's still existing. But we also put in, how much into the roof? 400,000?
Yeah.
So, I mean, where does it stop? I mean, we do have an existing library. I don't know how much we can keep piecemealing this and keep it going. Maybe we can do it for a while, or one day we might have to close the doors. I guess that's the discussion.
I guess my point where I was getting at was, if the initial incident we're discussing is the failing of that building, it would seem to me Occam's razor would indicate the simple solution is to fix that building. After the 5-10 years that we've been talking about it, we've expanded this conversation to include almost everything. And at some point, you have to realize that not all options are available. If we just kept it simple, drop back to fixing that existing building, I'm not saying it's an easy sell, so to speak, but it simplifies the question. And I think where I've noticed the issue is, the public is completely confused about what it is we are or are not doing, or where not we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And if we just kept it simple, our library building is failing, we need to fix it or replace it. That seems like the simplest solution to me.
So, you're right.
And I have a second follow-up point.
Okay, but we haven't discussed, I want somebody in staff to give the information on that too. Go ahead.
Okay. I realize it's a little more expensive. I mean, I've been party to some of that discussion, but to me, it seems like That is the keep it simple. This was the issue. This is what we're going to try to solve. As far as to the comments that I've heard, that nobody uses a library, we don't need a library, I just disagree. I know there are many students in our community who their only way they have access to a computer is the public library. That is how they do their applications to college. That's how they get their homework done. And whether that's a good story or not a story, it's unfortunate that those families don't have that accessibility, but it's a fact. And they use that public library to help them, frankly, change their situation. So to me, the discussion of whether we need a library or not is a non-starter. We need a library. They're still in use. Many people use them. So then the second part of that is, how do we solve the issue we have right now? And again, to me, fix the issue, keep it simple.
So the issue is fixing it, and I think we've all looked at that, but if I remember correctly, and that was then, it was 20-some million to fix the library as it is, and you're not expanding it. You're just fixing it. And at that time, we were looking at $20 million for a new library. Now, of course, that's changed because now time has gone on. Now, I don't know am I correct? Are those figures
I'm
accurate
just
pretty
seeing
much?
heads shaking, yeah.
So that was the discussion, do we take and put good money after bad into a facility that would cost us as much for a new one?
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, when I say fix it, if that means replace it, then it means, we want to put a structure there that is going to be stable and be accessible for the life of that structure.
Okay, so if you have to do one of the two things, you fix what you have and stays the same size instead of expanding the size, which they've indicated that they need a bigger library for multiple things. So if you keep it down there, I'm not sure if we can continue to fix it. Let's take your scenario. If we put $22 million into that facility, I think we would have problems meeting floodplain issues, and so then we have to, there's more money involved.
Again, I think that's not what I was saying. I was saying we have a solution, it's replacing that building. It's the $37 million option in that spot.
So you're agreeing with Sarah?
Yes, but that's a straightforward, we're having an issue with that building, it needs to be replaced, let's just replace it and keep it simple.
Okay. All right. So we have two that just say we go with the downtown location.
Well, I know from being on the library board for a while, one of the problems with the site is about every 20 years, there's been a pattern where the building had to grow due to need. And this is something for the technicians to resolve, but the problem with the foundation of it is it is essentially 3 different constructions of different depths of pier and post foundation. So when a king tide comes through, if I recall correctly, that building can shift by as much as an inch in elevation and not all at the same rate from part to part. And if I remember right, the center beam going down the middle is torqued, which doesn't change what you're saying. It's still, we could try and repair it where it's at, but.
Well, I think the location down there, Drew, that they've talked about, Sarah and I think Troy have both talked about, and what's been indicated is that you would elevate it up. And you'd have to do it in that fashion. So that's why the extra expense if you continue with it down there.
I think you have to replace the roof too if it's all torqued.
No, I think you have to build a brand new library.
You'd have to build a brand new library.
Yeah.
But in that location.
I would feel hesitant about telling people we want to repair it and then building a whole new one. I wouldn't feel straightforward if that's what I said.
Well, I mean, so if I made that indication, then I will correct that indication.
Okay.
My point is, we are going to replace a damaged structure to a structure that is stable and will last its lifetime.
Gotcha.
So we have Councilor Stevens and Councilor Cribbins that both said that they just want to go forward in November with the library being built downtown in the house. Carmen, where are you at on this?
Oh, man. Well, I'll try to keep it short. I've really wanted to move the library into a more strategic place for emergency support, tsunami, get it out of the floodplain, but we can get it out of the floodplain with design work in the current location. Lots of people love it where it is well-known space, it is right downtown. It's not changing anything, it's just replacing. And I think I'm leaning towards just replacing the building where it is, and seeing if we can push that through. My heart has been all over the place on this one, but we got to pick a direction. We've narrowed it down to 2 options, and now we're being asked to narrow it down to 1, and I think I'm just leaning towards keeping it downtown and getting it out of the floodplain, making it more secure, and expanding it.
Okay, we got 3. Stephanie?
I don't have any comment. I think, unfortunately, there's a whole gamut of issues that come with doing that, including, the library and whether or not it's open. It does get a tremendous amount of use and unique use. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I will, get on my soapbox for just a minute, and I will say, as I said to my son, who is a taxpayer, that he benefited his entire school years from somebody making an investment in the community that lasted a very, very long time, because they decided to invest in the schools that he went to years ago. They didn't have a brand-new school. They were schools. And I think that that's what we're talking about here. We're at a point where we have to make an investment for something that's probably going to be around for a long time. It is necessary to meet the technology of today that we do upgrade that facility. There's no question in my mind that we need to have a center that has a library in it and all of the things that the library does, just for the very basic reasons that Councilor Cribben stated. I think it's a very tough uphill battle that we're going to face.
I'll circle back in. I think I've come to the point where I agree with the downtown one. If we have to redesign this anyway, we can look at how to make it more cost effective. If it were to be done in the same place, it will be a logistical nightmare to keep access to the books and everything going during a reconstruction. But city councilors, like what I tell people about executive directors, nobody needs us when things go right, so whatever comes in front of us is always going to be a headache. So I apologize to staff that we passed it along, but I do think that's where we're likely at. It was the most popular site. It wasn't when dollars were factored in, but now that we've got changes potentially in scope, that changes the dollars, so it could make the location along with the price more appealing.
All right, so it's unfortunate that this didn't turn out the way we expected. I still think an advisory vote might be the best way to go. I don't know if we can do, maybe Jennifer, you can chime in, or Nicole, but Jennifer, since you have expertise in this type of thing, can we get a new design to change it and scale it down in the time frame by November? When we go out, instead of saying it's going to be 33 million, it's going to be whatever? Or do we want to scale it down, or we just want to continue with the way we're talking about? That's another thing. Drew's talking about scaling it back. I just think when we go out with the ballot measure, we need to say it's going to be this. We can't be saying that it's going to be less or more or what.
I don't think we should scale it back.
Okay.
Well, part of what I'm saying with the scale back is it doesn't need to have a dispatch center anymore.
Yeah, I don't think
just
this-
be a library.
Yeah,
Because
I
to
don't-
me, that was my original point, was you're just adding confusion to it. That's a
Yeah.
whole separate
All right.
conversation.
Okay.
We're
I
talking
don't
about
think
replacing our
The
library.
dispatch isn't going to be in the downtown one. With never.
Not in the downtown
No,
one.
it never was.
Okay.
I will maintain from a public relations point that we are not replacing a library. We are replacing a center that has a library, because that's really what it has become.
Yes, I agree. So it's how you promote it or not promote it, or you put it out there as what it is. All right. So we're at, Carmen and then Sarah. Or who's first? I don't know who put their hand up first.
Go for it, Kristen.
I was just going to echo what Councilor Kilmer was saying, that it really is just calling a library what it is. It's a community center, and I completely agree. And I wish I would have put that in my comments, but I'm going to do it now in support of her direction. The library is much more than books. It is programs. It is educational, instruction. It is a library of things. It is so much more than just what the word library, I think, elicits in one's mind. And so the expansion of the concept of the library or in towards a community center, I think is imperative, and designing the building as such, I think will help hopefully make this a little bit more of an easier pill to swallow. And Stephanie, I just want to say that I really agree with what your son was saying about the sentiment about others, the generations before us, investing in our future. I too have benefited greatly from the citizens of this community investing in my future, and here I am hopefully trying to do the same thing for the future generations to come, and I really hope we can pull people together. So great comment, and I really hope we can pull this through.
All right, so, like I said, I wish that we could have gotten the advisory vote, and we had planned on going out for for a bond issue in November. I really, even though I think that's the correct way to go, I don't want to keep pushing this further down the road, and I think that's where we're at. Oh, Sarah, I apologize.
No problem. I just wanted to make the point that on the election results, while the question didn't have a ton of clarity, we did receive 56.77% in favor of a future library. And I think the way I personally interpret that is that we have support for a new library. And yes, the question was confusing, and yes, it wasn't written the way that we had wanted it to be written, but I do think that this tells us something about the voter appetite and the community commitment to a new library.
Okay. All right, so again, I don't want to push this down any further, so I'm going to go along with the downtown location. So anyway, at least, so we need do you want a motion on this, Nicole, or consensus is fine?
I don't think I
Okay.
took notes.
All right,
I know who said what.
all right.
We'll walk forward with the downtown location.
Okay.
So.
All right, public comments is the next item on the agenda. So public comments period is intended for the public to share ideas and concerns. It is not intended for the interactive discussion with the council. There may be opportunities for public comments during specific agenda items and require a public hearing. We passed that point. Members of the public are requested to confine the remarks to the questions or issues under discussion during the time. During any designated comment period, individuals shall not engage in personal attacks, shall not impugn the motives of any speaker, and shall at all times while in session conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. No person shall make personal, impertinent, slanderous, unauthorized remarks or become boisterous while addressing the council. And we have Scott Fraser. How are you? Been sitting there so patiently all evening, Scott.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, City staff. Yesterday I reached out to Nicole concerning a tree blocking a large part of First Avenue in the east side of town. It's regularly used by school buses to transport students, and city staff was very quick to address the problem and safety issues, so I want to say thank you. I also want to thank city staff for repairing potholes around town. I was on my way to work on Coos Bay Boulevard and was pleasantly surprised that there was a lot of patches that were very smooth, and I didn't have to dodge a bunch of holes. So, and I see work going on around the city, not just Coos Bay Boulevard, but quite a few different locations. And I guess it's that time of year too. So, one thing I wanted to say about 2417 is public comment during meeting allowed on agenda items that are going to vote. Because I think it's important for the public to be able to comment, to try to, I don't know, give their opinion on something before it goes to a vote. I didn't know if that was really addressed. I know Mike Vaughn made a similar comment in the last meeting, and I think that's about all I've got.
Thank you, Scott, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chris Castleman.
Chris Castleman. I wanted to ask for an update on the fentanyl crisis. I know back in March you guys passed an emergency declaration. It's been 3 months. I read on the internet that someone overdosed in John Toppet's Park last week. I don't know if that's true or not, but I read it on the internet, so maybe it's not true. But if it is, that's concerning. I mean, just in general, fentanyl, people using fentanyl, frying their brains, running around our town, is not good. So I appreciated the emergency declaration, but I've been to a lot of these meetings and I haven't heard any sort of update on it. I know that most of that declaration was asking the state for funding, but have you guys looked into any action that you guys could take to address the fentanyl crisis? Have you guys had discussions with the county or the city of North Bend to see if you guys can partner with them and maybe approach the state from a partnership standpoint? I don't know, it's just concerning that we would pass an emergency declaration and then just kind of let it go. So that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so, well, I think that, well, we can address these items, I guess, city manager's report, and you can address the items that were before us.
From comments?
Yes.
Sure. I believe, so just starting with the first one, related to public comments during agenda items, there was some discussion about that being a concern, is making sure that people can speak during those moments, not just at public comments. I guess I'm interested in knowing, I think that's not how it's written, so that's something that was left unchanged.
Correct, so. And I think the discussion, I don't think you were here at that time, and everyone can chime in, was that that's why one of the reasons we moved public comments up and at the beginning, and I will reiterate, if there's an agenda item that they want us to address or they have a concern about, to express it at that time. And I think that if there's enough consideration for an agenda item, then I think this council needs to decide, do they want to open up public comment? And that's something that they can decide on collectively. We'll see how it goes. So, and the fentanyl.
Thank you. And then the fentanyl crisis, I think those are great suggestions. To date, it has been really just, trying to work with the state to get the same access points that were given to other communities. So, beyond that, we are working with the county on not quite similar, but the sobering center, that's going to be a piece of this. So those are the elements
geez.
that
Sorry,
I'm
guys.
aware of.
All right. I guess it's time for your city manager's report.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you want to add?
I mean, that's what I have, and we can certainly, talk with staff tomorrow. We have our department head, and if there's something of greater efforts there that I'm not aware of or haven't paid enough attention to, certainly we'll bring that back.
So you'll talk to the chief and find out and go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first thing I had on my list, we continually have problems with the clock. It doesn't maintain time, so we are looking at some options. Just wanted to get a feel for digital or analog choice. Does this room have a style you would prefer to have similar, or can we get a plug-in digital? There is a plug-in behind there. Wouldn't require staff to change batteries all the time, and so.
What do you guys want?
We want easy. so digital
Councilor
plug-in.
Matthews suggesting some updates to this room, and maybe that could be part of the design?
He did, and they're done. If you've noticed that, you can nicely walk around the room and take a view at all of the pictures that are here. They're a little bit more visually appealing, so that was done. There's probably a benefit to getting a clock that kind of has the same feel of the room, but we do have to take it down and change the batteries. I think the motor is bad, so that's why we constantly fight. It was changed today.
No, I'm saying I like analog.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter to me, but can't you get one that's wired
can
in
get it
and
plugged,
is
yeah.
atomically correct? Okay.
Yeah. Before we just did it, this is your meeting space. If there was a preference, we'd just make sure we stuck to the preference. Reminder, if you haven't seen, the United Way Day of Caring is coming up on Saturday. That is an event that several organizations participate in. OBAB has a group that comes. People in our community sign up. They have the option to get some folks to come to their homes and help with their yard work. It can be moving wood, and just all sorts of things. So it's a sign up to get assistance, and then you can also sign up to come and help. The event is from 9 to 12, and we start at the fire station. Follow up to, I think you asked previously about 40 acres at up by Cascade. That property is, the majority of it is within the watershed, where all uses, except for uses related to the operation and maintenance of the water system, and civic uses that don't directly drain into the upper or lower Pony Creek Reservoir, are prohibited. So there's a very limited, because it's in the watershed, that we can't use that space for that. We could certainly look at rezoning, but that process, given that watershed piece, is I wouldn't say impossible, but pretty darn close to that. So the next thing I was going to talk about, we recently applied for a Safe Routes to School grant and was awarded for that. We're looking at 3 school areas to address that Safe Routes to School. That's for Sunset Middle School, Destinations Academy, and Marshfield High School. A piece of that process is to establish a project management team, which could include community members and representatives from places like the school district, parent-teacher associations, Empire Coalition, Downtown Association, Parks Commission. And we were wanting to ask if there was interest from the council to sit on that. It's potentially a commitment of about 4 to 5 meetings. They could be up to a couple hours each, and that will happen over a 12 to 18-month period as we kind of gather information that will help inform what the final result of that project looks like. So there'll be a review of documents, things like that you'd want to do in preparation for those meetings, just opening that up if that is something that you, anyone might have interest in. You don't have to tell me tonight, you could let us know sooner, probably rather than later, because we are trying to get that going and working with ODOT. So let's see. Tomorrow, for the November election, the first filing date starts. So for those who are interested in applying for a position on the council, we do have some positions coming up. Just for general awareness, we generally have a staggered 3 council members are up every 4 years. The other 3 are up in the offset years, and then mayor's position is every 2 years. So essentially every 2 years we have a mayor position and 3 councilor roles up. That is open up through August 27th. If anyone is interested, they can come into City Hall in the city manager's office. Christine handles that piece. There is 2 options for doing that. You can either pay the fee, which is $26.25, I think, or you can request to do it by petition and get 25 signatures in the community. Either way, if you want to stop in, have questions, I'm happy to answer those. Opens up tomorrow morning. And at the previous meeting, you had appointed me to the Water Board's Budget Committee. And while I would love to hold that role, I have a family medical issue that's looking like some changes might happen a little bit faster than I was expecting, and that lends to a little bit of uncertainty. So I talked to our finance director, and she has willingness to help and make sure there's some continuity there. I also talked to the executive director today at the water board, Mr. Thomas, and they were fine with that last minute adjustment. So I'm just confirming that that's acceptable for you to have Melissa sit in that role this year. And then just a reminder, tomorrow's mayor's talk at the library has been canceled, just due to, well, the mayor, and likely I might not be there either tomorrow. So we'll continue following the 18th meeting. So that is what I had.
So I got a couple questions that maybe you have answers for. The fence around the lot on 4th and Anderson was supposed to be June 1st, I thought.
June 1st, yeah.
And we were at June 4th, and so I would just like to know what the status is.
Yes, so we are on the list for West Coast fencing, which now they're saying is towards the end of July.
But I thought we had our own construction fence.
We did, but there was some issues with the gates. We have to be able to provide, because of the way that that lot is and the direct connection to the building that's adjacent, we have to have some way for people to exit that back side of those building and get in there. And I think our gates were not appropriate for the safety of exiting and also limiting access on. So that is where we are at. We do have signage up, it does, and we did have the RFP out. I don't think we had interest the first go around. As far as a proposal, we did have people asking some questions, so it's gonna sit out there on the streets a little bit longer and see if we can drum up some interest.
So the other thing I have a question about, the parking lot on 3rd and Central. Gorgeous parking lot, used all the time. It's wonderful to see. They put up this container, which was a surprise to me. But, you know, when things are presented to this council in a plan, I'm not always detailed at looking at a plan and understanding what's going to come out of the concept except the basic stuff. So I was concerned, and I thought it might just be an enclosure, which really concerned me, but it wasn't. Then they put doors on it and locked it. So I inquired about it, and I was told it was to house a garbage container. I have real issues with a garbage container going there. I think that we need to look at something else going there. I think it's been used for other things. And my concern is that I don't know if you've relayed that information to staff and we've come up with a different solution. My concern was, council, is that anyone that is familiar with the garbage truck that pulls up with the forks and gets in there on this nice new paver parking lot, and I can see all kinds of havoc happening. And then I think there's going to be a smell, and of course, you can have clean garbage and maybe only paper, but I don't know if that's always going to be the case, because I also understood it was going to be used by the farmer's market, so I think there might be some other debris in there that could cause a problem. Anyway, I think that is a bad idea to put a garbage container in there. I think we should use something else. Now, I don't know if you came back and have suggestions?
I have not. That's on my list for tomorrow's meeting, but yeah.
Because I thought there might be an interest, you said also, the
Yeah,
downtown
so
association
one
had
of the
interest in
things-
a stage being there?
Yeah, there was a inquiry, and I don't know if the Downtown Association even ended up purchasing it, but they were looking at a stage that could be broken down, but they were looking for storage. And at the time, we were struggling kind of to find that. I don't know if this would work. You know, those are things we'd have to kind of get the dimensions and determine, but
Anyway, I'm not sure the rest of the council feels about it, but I have concern with that. I think the stage is great. I think if it can be utilized for something like that, and some kind of storage or whatever it may be, it's fine. Because I just would hate to see it changed, or this would diminish what's being there. Anyway, that's all I had for, anyway.
Follow up.
All right, we're to the point of council comments. Troy.
Thank you, Mayor. Pretty simple, just was going to acknowledge high school graduation coming up this weekend for Coos Bay, and I will be participating. Our youngest will be heading off. And then I wanted to say we were discussing public comment. The 29th, Senator Ron Wyden was down and had a town hall, and this Friday, Senator Jeff Merkley will be having a town hall, North Bend Community Center. Those are both great forums for public comment, and interactive discussion between your representatives and the citizenry. And that's all I had.
Okay, Stephanie.
Just a couple of things. I attended the Confederated Tribe of the Coos, Loromquah, and Sayusa Indians dedication and ribbon cutting of their wellness center in Empire in the former Banner Bank. I think it was even goes back to Western Bank. And what a gorgeous revamp of that building that they've done. They will be opening, right now they're booking for their tribal members, and they will be opening it up to the community July 1st. So filling a need for healthcare in our community, and a very exciting day for them. So just wanted to mention that. Also coming up on Friday is the Wine Walk, which will be benefiting the Oregon Coast Music Association. That is, the Wine Walk is in downtown Front Street and Coos Bay Village, and it's put on by the Coos Bay North Bend Rotary Club. Next month is a big one. It will be commemorating the 150th birthday of Coos Bay, and so there will be commemorative glasses etched with the sesquicentennial logo, and also the Coos Bay Downtown Association. That's July 5th. So this Friday from 5 to 7, starting points are the Coos Bay Visitor Center and Checkerberry's Flowers and Gifts. And then next month, same starting points, but that will be July 5th. That's all I have.
Thanks, Stephanie. Drew?
Sure. So just a couple things. Appreciate the Pride Declaration. Impetus was back in the 60s with the Stonewall riots, is often considered the first jumping off point for it, but it can get lost how recent this still is. I got out of the Navy in '09, and Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still in effect through 2011. So somebody's right to serve their country, their privilege to fight and die for their country, wasn't even still fully allowed through 2011. If you wanted to have a picture of your loved one on your desk while you were in that time frame, you weren't allowed, or you could get kicked out. If somebody was working in a field and had a disagreement with their supervisor, I had seen it used as extortion. If the individual could be considered within that field, they were threatened with discharge if they wouldn't toe the line. So this is still something that is very real, very existent, or very recent. And even if we consider the date, if somebody were to be born on the date that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, they would still not be eligible for service today. They would be so young. So that's an important one to me. Appreciate that we did the Juneteenth Declaration as well. We're a country that celebrates the freedom of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We celebrate in July our freedom from a king, so it makes perfect sense we would celebrate Americans' freedom from other Americans in June. And as a note on there, it's also PTSD Awareness Month. So talk to your friends, talk to your vets, talk to the families of vets who lost their vets. We had Memorial Day, and that could be a hard time for folks as well. The fentanyl crisis declarations, you know, the hope was that the county would follow along and do their declaration and continue down that path. There were concerns about having to repay for the services received. I had talked with the advisor to the director of the Oregon Emergency Management Department since that date, and they indicated no conversation has taken place around repayment for the services within the communities that were provided assistance or are being provided assistance under the fentanyl crisis order in metro area. So it would have been nice if they came along, but they didn't. I did a ride along with one of our officers 2 weeks ago, learned more about the effort to get us designated as a high-intensity drug trafficking area, a HIDTA area, that would bring additional federal resources in here, federal training. So I need to connect more with the sheriff about that. I haven't had that opportunity yet. And I'm talking with Court Boyce, House Rep, more to the South County, but one of the things I learned in the process of the ride-along was about our Customs and Border Patrol here in Coos County and farther up. And it turns out from I visited with the guy that is our Customs and Border Security guy, and from Harbor to north of Newport, about 164 miles of coast, we have one coastal customs officer, and he is not funded for a replacement when he takes vacation. So in effect, we have less than one person for all of the sea traffic we have along the southern half of the Oregon coast. So I'm talking with Court Boyce because he's taken an interest in border issues, and I'm trying to point that we have one to the west. So, yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Thanks. Thanks, Drew. Sarah?
Happy Pride Month, and to Drew, well said about both Pride Month and Juneteenth. I appreciate the council for recognizing those proclamations. That's all for me. Thanks.
Thanks. Carmen?
I really was thinking along the same lines as Drew and Sarah, and I just want to say, Drew, you said it better than I could have said it, so I just will support you and support our whole council in celebrating Pride Month, and pleased to be in this community where we are allowing these proclamations to have their place and our own celebrations within our community. And I appreciate Jaden coming here and reading those for us this evening. So with that, that's pretty much all I have. Appreciate the discussion tonight on various topics, and thank you all.
Thank you, all of you. So I agree that, June being Pride Month and Juneteenth, but also this is the time of year that visitors start coming in. And I think it's important, and I wrote a letter about that in a Friday update, that we should kind of spruce things up. But so everyone understands that I have a real passion for tourism. And tourism, we had Travel Oregon made a presentation with the Chamber of the WBC, and our visitor spending for this county is up 8.6% to $329 million. So this is a huge economic impact to our community and our county. To Coos Bay, North Bend, and Charleston, it's up 7% to $147 million. So it does 2,100 jobs, and it's huge for our industry and our community. So I think that we need to make sure that we keep moving forward. I really want to commend Janice from the VCB, TSOC, all of them that work together to make this happen. So it's really a wonderful operation that happens. The other thing, Nicole, I forgot to ask you about, can we get an update on, because the council was concerned about, some derelict buildings that we talked about moving forward on. And the one downtown, 367, 371, and 383, West Anderson, they had a hearing on February 7th, and I think you told us about that, but we never knew what happened after that and where we're at on that. So if we could have an update of where we're at, where's the process, also the Gussie's building, or whatever that facility is called, and the address, I don't know where else to re-reference it, but again, they were supposed to take a permit out, and then it was stalled, and I don't know where it's at, and after 180 days, then there was an option for us to do some kind of action. And so I think if we could have a regular update of where we're at on that, so the council can make a determination they want to move forward, or they don't, at least we know where to go, instead of just being up in the air about it. The other thing I would like to us address, and I think that we need to have Nate here, or we need to think about this, is a camping ordinance that we have. I've read it and gone over it, and there's some things that I feel that are in this ordinance that might not be legal or we're not enforcing. The other thing, I'd like to really find a way, if we allow these camping to happen, and if I understand correctly, they can have 3 motorhomes or 3 camps or 3 sites for individual locations. But because of these, we're finding that that's not being adhered to. And what's happening, we're having to get involved. And when I say we, the city, to help correct it. Just like with Methodist Church, they had, I don't know how many campsites there, and then they asked for help, but it was not maintained. So is there a way that we can say, if you're going to have this, we want 24-hour oversight? I don't know if we can. I'm not sure, but I think that if we keep asking that these locations are allowing this, and I know that they're needed, and I think that we support it, but the point is they need to find a way to adhere to certain things to make sure that it doesn't impact the community in other ways. I also know that, that Nate had asked, and we inquired about people dropping people off at the Devereaux Center. And if we knew who they were, right, that we could do an injunction. Well, I know it's happening, and I've heard about it. You know, and we can surmise that what organizations are doing this, but the point is, it's happening at night, and then the fallout is for the Devereaux Center. But again, I think the Devereaux Center has a responsibility to make sure there's some kind of security, or not allowing it to happen. So I'm not sure how we can get there, but going through this, you know, it says a family, because we have referenced that, how do we know, at the Devereaux Center was brought up, that these people staying here aren't three groups or whatever, but our ordinance is pretty specific. It says 2 or more persons related by blood, marriage, or adoption, that's one family, and we can only have 3. So I think that we need to start looking at enforcing this or holding them to some kind of something that's not being done, you know. And it's frustrating for, I think, this council, plus also the individuals that are allowing it to happen. So I don't know, I know we're getting into legal areas here, but I think that we need to look at this. The other thing is provide storage area for campers to store any personal items so they are not visible from the public street. But I see camping paraphernalia all the time, but I don't think there's anything, and I know that it's a problem. If we collect it, then we have to log it, we have to store it, so there's some criteria that goes along with that. But for instance, there's some items that have been down on the block by the parking lot for 3 days, and it's just covered with a vinyl tarp. So, and I know it's a problem, but what do we do with that? Is there an easy way to take care of it? I don't know. I know it's put pressure on our police department, but I think that we need to look at a way of, since tourists are coming, that we want to find a way to have the best foot forward. Anyway, I looked at this, and I think there's some things that we need to look at and review it. I don't know. So those are the end of my comments. I want to thank everyone for attending, and so thank you. Have a good evening. Meeting adjourned. No urban renewal.